Concept 1 is the volume of a cylinder. So a cylinder is typically seen in things like canned goods or other shapes of that nature. A cylinder's volume is found by multiplying pi by the radius squared by the height. So the radius we know is on the side that is circular, and radius is halfway across a circle. So if they ever show us all the way across the circle, that is representing the diameter, and we know we need the radius, which is half of a diameter. The height is going to be the long side that goes from one end with the circle to the other end with the circle. So basically like a height of canned good. So we have our first example. So in this image, the 8, since it's across the circular face, would technically be representing the diameter here. And it's the diameter because it's all the way across the circle. The formula calls for the radius, and we know the radius is half of a diameter. So I know my radius here is really 4 because it's half of the diameter. The other side is the height, so the height is 3. Our formula was pi times r squared times h. So with these types of problems, you're going to have to be very careful and follow the directions of how they want you to work it out, because there's really 3 different options. They might tell you to actually use the pi button on the calculator. They might tell you to use 3.14 for pi, or another option is they may say sometimes express in terms of pi. So it's just a matter of preference of how they want you to work the problem out. So we're going to look at what it would look like all 3 different ways. So if they don't give us any general directions and they just say find the volume, then we're going to use the pi button on our calculator and we're going to do the formula. So we know the formula is pi r squared h. So in our calculator we would hit the pi button times the radius squared. Well, the radius is 4, so it's going to be 4 to the second power times the height, which is 3. So we're going to just use our calculator and figure out what that would come out to be using the pi button on the calculator, which is about as accurate as we can get because we can't actually type in the entire amount of pi because it keeps going forever. So when we type that in, we get approximately 150.8. So that is approximately 150.8 feet cubed. So volume is a 3-dimensional measurement. Anytime I have a unit and it's representing the volume, it's technically to the 3rd power. Volume is representing the capacity of an object, how much an object can hold. So if this cylinder was an open container, volume would be how much water I could fit in that cylinder or how much air I could fit in that cylinder. It's just the capacity of that object of what it could hold. Okay, so using pi, we get 150.8 feet cubed. If instead we use 3.14 for pi, the only difference is we're going to still use the same formula. We would just have set it up as 3.14 times the radius squared, so 4 squared, times the height, so that's 3. So if instead of using the pi button we use 3.14, our answer is going to be very slightly different. Not extremely different, just a little bit different. So when we type that in, we get 150.72. So it's not much different at all. 150.72, if I actually compare They're almost the same answer. This just rounded up to 0.8, and if I were to round this to the nearest tenth, it would say 150.7. So the last option, if they were to tell you to express your answer in terms of pi, this is actually the most exact way that we can express our answer. So if they tell you to express the exact volume, they're saying express in terms of pi. So what that means is that we just need to leave the pi symbol alone, and we're going to keep it as a part of our answer. So I would not multiply out pi with the radius and the height. I'm just going to leave pi as part of the answer. So I would calculate what 4 squared times 3 is, because I'm still going to do the radius squared times the height, but then I'm not going to multiply pi in there. So 4 squared times 3 is just 16 times 3, which is 48. And so our answer in terms of pi would be 48 pi. So all of these are the correct answer. These are all the volume: 150.8 feet cubed, 150.72 feet cubed, or technically 48 pi feet cubed. These are all the correct answer. It just depends on how they tell me to work the problem out. If they don't give me any exact directions, I can just use the pi button in my calculator. If they tell me to use 3.14, then I'm going to use that because it's going to make it round to something a little bit different. And if they say give the exact answer or express in terms of pi, then I leave pi out of my calculations, but it remains a part of my answer. So for this particular problem, we're going to go ahead and give our answer based on using 3.14. And so our answer is 150.72 feet cubed. So for this one, we're going to use 3.14 for pi. Okay, so if we do that, and our formula for the cylinder is usually that volume equals pi r squared h, and I just told you we're going to use 3.14 for pi. We're going to be doing volume equals 3.14. The radius squared, well, for this particular cylinder, the radius is 2. I know that because that's halfway through the circle. And so our radius is 2, so times 2 to the second power times the height, which for this one is 5. So we are going to type in our calculator 3.14 times 2 squared times 5. If we already know that 2 to the second power is 4, you could simply type that in to save some time. So when we type that in, that gives us 62.8 kilometers to the third power. If we had done it with the pi symbol, it would have been just a little bit different. And then if we were to express it in terms of pi, so just as an example, if I wanted to show you what it would be in terms of pi, if that was the directions we had been given, we would have left pi as a part of our answer, but we would have done the radius squared times the height. So we would have had 2 squared times 5, which 2 squared is 4 times 5 equals 20. And since we're not calculating pi in the calculations, it just stays 20 pi kilometers cubed. So the big difference here is in one version, I don't multiply it by pi. I leave pi as part of the answer, and I just multiply the radius squared times the height. If they tell me to actually work it all the way out and they give me explicit directions to use 3.14 for pi, then I need to use that in the calculations and the formula and plug it in place of where pi would usually go. So for this one, our final answer is 62.8 kilometers. So on the next two questions, I would like you to try. You've got one where they're giving you the diameter and you need to be careful because you need the radius. And then you have another one where they are just giving you the radius, so you can go ahead and start plugging it into the formula where it goes. On the assignment, be very careful of and cautious of the directions, because if it says to solve using 3.14, you need to plug that in for pi. If it says to express your answer in terms of pi, then you need to leave pi as a part of your answer. So go ahead and try the following two questions on cylinders, and let's see how you do.